I'd like to invite our panelists. Please put your hands together for Mr. Hardeep Brad, Vice President and Head of Marketing Sales, Kia India. Mr. Naveen Chauhan, Head, Sales and After Sales, Hero Motorcorp. Mr. Rajan Pental, Senior Group President and Global Head, Retail Banking, Yes Bank. Can we have a round of applause for the gentleman? Thank you. And of course, Mr. Vijay Ram Nakra, CEO, Automotive Division, Mahindra & Mahindra, will be joining us virtually, along with Mr. Vipin Sondi, Managing Director and CEO, Ashok Leyland Limited, will also be joining us virtually. Dr. MP Sham, Dealer Principal, Akshaya Motors. Can we have a huge round of applause? And of course, our moderator for this session, please put your hands together for Mr. Hormaz Sorabji, Editor, Autocar India. Over to you, Mr. Hormaz.
Good afternoon. This session is on the future of retail. I think predicting the future these days is risky business, but we have a very august panel, and with me, as already been introduced, but from the OEM side, we have Hardeep Bra from Kia, we have Naveen Chauhan from Hero MotoCorp, we have Vijay Nakra from Mahindra & Mahindra, and Mr. Sondi from Ashok Leyland. From the banking side, we've got Mr. Pental, and representing the dealer community, we've got Shyam from Advait Motors. Introductions have already been done, so what I'd like to do is, just to set some context, looking at the future, maybe take a step back and look at the past, and the past is just 2 years, which has been probably the most tumultuous period the auto industry has gone through, to see if there are any trends which is kind of determining the future course of direction going forward. Obviously, some things have changed. There's been a new normal, is the old normal coming back? And with this, I'd just like to kick off with from the OEM side. Hardeep, since you're physically present, I'd like you to kind of just give some context as to, what are the definite trends that are emerging, some of which I'm sure must be irreversible and probably accelerating a future path, which may have taken a longer time, but given the current situation, it's upon us sooner than later.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Hormaz. I think the first thing which has really happened over the last 2 years is the digitization. I think that has really I would say it has gone 6 to 7 years ahead, probably, which has been covered in the last 2 years. First of all, as we saw that there were a lot of customers who were walking into multiple showrooms before they made decision. Now, I think a lot of homework has been done online. I mean, you have different website, you have OEM website, you have a lot of video views that you can, in fact, you guys keep churning out a lot of videos out of various products that you test. So I think videos has become one of the biggest tools which people look at. And before they really walk into a couple of showrooms, so maybe 5 or 6 showrooms earlier, down to maybe 2 showrooms now, and they are very clear about what they really want to go for. And that's where the decision gets made. So digitization is something which has really gone up. In the digitization space as well, there are some customers which are not willing to really come to the showrooms, and they want to have video consultation. And I think video consultation is the second big thing which has happened, because you are sitting at place X and your another family member is sitting in town B. So you just connect all of them together, and you clarify all the questions which a customer has. Even you can give a 360-degree view of how the car looks like from inside, outside, and that is also kind of speeding up pretty fast. Even in after sales, customers which were not really willing to come to who were wanting to come to workshop, I think earlier it was 70 to 80%. Now clearly there are a lot of pick and drops which are happening, and consumers really want to see where their car is, because earlier he was apprehensive that somebody may pick their car, take it to another place, and so now, in many manufacturers, for that matter, we have started giving a real-time tracking. Customer can know where exactly the car is, and he would know when the car has been picked from his place, has reached the dealership, when it will leave the dealership and reach his place. So it's like, real-time tracking. So I think these things probably we couldn't think of before in the pre-pandemic era. And I think this, I would say this was a blessing in disguise that, everything has been, this act as a catalyst, and all these initiatives wouldn't have been possible otherwise. I think this is something which has been from the digitization space. And also, we are also looking at, how we can marry the digital and the physical space together and kind of have smaller setups in smaller towns and take lead through the digital space. So I think these are some of the areas which, come to top of my mind.
Right. Sticking with the PV side of things, Vijay, I'd like to turn to you. I hope you can hear us and see us.
Yes, I can,
Oh,
almost.
great.
Thank
Wow,
you.
that's very
Yes,
clear.
right.
You've heard Hardeep talk about the accelerated pace of digitization, or the way of, let's say, getting content digitally. Talked about videos. From your side, I mean, you've done a lot. We've seen the kind of massive buzz that's been created with the XUV 700. I mean, would you obviously you would concur, but are there any other more distinct trends you are seeing that, again, this has really been accelerated, much more right now, and this is definitely going to be a future trajectory, which is, it is irreversible, but it's just gaining more and more momentum.
Hormuz, thanks. Firstly, pleasure to be here with everyone, and hello to all our channel partners there and all the other dealers from the automobile fraternity. Hormuz, I think what Hardeep also spoke about and what you are reiterating, that's a norm and that's a given. I just want to cover two or three things, and so just bear with me for a bit. One is, I think digitization was a given, but what happened 18 months ago became like an S curve. And the whole concept of digital experience, and I don't call that selling anymore, because about 2 years ago it was selling, now it's all about experience. And the difference that I'm seeing pre-pandemic and post-pandemic is now it's not about pieces of digital. It's going to be how you seamlessly connect the customer journey, how OEs play a larger role in getting affinity to the brand from the customers and helping higher conversion with the dealers. So a very large part of digital investment now sits with OEs, and like you said, we've done that with 700 and has helped create a lot of buzz. And I think all OEs sitting over there will be planning the same. The point I'm trying to say is, how do we make it seamless so that the information shared on the customer, online or offline, and we now call them butterfly customers. And it's very important that whether it's your call center, whether it's your website, whether it's the dealer sales consultant or the ICRE, everybody gets one view of the customer. So I think that's the next big disruption that's going to happen. But having said that, Hormuz, frankly, if you ask me what happened 18 months back, somewhere I also feel that memory is a little short, and a lot of customers have already started going back into dealerships. Given the digital era right now, at least I find it as a great opportunity to talk to almost 4 to 5 dealers every could not do in the past. But one thing I'm hearing from all our channel partners is customers are coming back in a big way into the showrooms, which also is very encouraging. And hence, I think what we expected to be the big boom that would happen digitally, I think one just needs to weigh the realities of what's going to happen in the next 12 to 18 months. So I think that's a little bit of a balance that we would need to watch out for.
No, that's interesting that you said, that memories are short. People are going back into showrooms. One wonders, is the old normal coming back to some extent, because cars and bikes are such a emotive thing. And, Naveen, I'd like to turn to you. I mean, your scale is a different level altogether. You all sell in millions. Just to understand, these last 18 months, is there anything that's shifted permanently, and or as Vijay said, things are coming back to, people just going back into showrooms?
Okay, so Hardeep said about it. I think there's a phenomenal change that has happened in the digital, which is what meets the eye, what's happening at the consumer end, what's happening at the interface of the customer and the dealership and the OEM. Big irreversible change that I see. And if I were to kind of look at the consumer journey, which starts with awareness and consideration set, largely dominated by the dealer actions. Now, I think fundamentally there'll be a lot of actions from OEM side, OEM driven, and the local flavor will come with local digital actions from the dealer, but there'll be centralized pitch that'll come in from OEMs. While that's on the consumer side, but I think there are big irreversible changes which are also happening in terms of the way OEMs are looking at the business. For example, the COVID had a severe impact on the income levels of people. Now in our industry, we're looking at what can be innovative ownership models. And it's the need which gives the birth to all these innovations. We are looking at how differently do we look at customer owning the asset. And if they come into the play, they get ingrained into the system and they'll continue to be there in the future as well. So that's going to be an added advantage as we move. Hopefully, these income levels which have been impacted by COVID will come back. But I think those ownership models will continue in future. Second, within the OEMs, largely the IT's function, it would play a very strong supportive role, but I think it is becoming a core now. And hence you will see a lot of restructuring, rethinking in terms of the digital assets that the organization carry, digital play that the organization come into the play, and not just on the consumer side, but I also strengthening maybe supply chain, the whole value chain from the back end till the consumer end. I think those are some real advantages, benefits that this crisis is giving to the whole ecosystem.
Right. And so clearly, as you also mentioned, these changes are irreversible, some of them. Vipin, turning to you, obviously the other end of the spectrum, obviously dealing with fleets and, your customer base, also not being able to reach out to them. What changes have you seen that you also feel is, kind of shifted the trajectory of the way retail is going to go forward for you?
Good evening, Hormuz, and good evening, everybody. Two or three things. Hormuz, you mentioned about whether we are returning to a new normal, returning to the old normal. I don't think there's going to be a normal anymore. It will constantly be disrupted. The important thing is that perhaps for the first time in our career, at least in my career, health has been a reason for an economic slowdown and a lockdown. It was either financial or it was government policy these last many, many years. And if health becomes it, we've got to factor that in the way we address going forward. Customer expectations are changing almost as far as we are concerned. They've changed. The conversation has changed beyond specification and performance, which is kilometers per liter horsepower, to productivity and profitability, which is total cost of ownership, turnaround time. And therefore, companies are looking more and more at being solution providers, especially now with EV buses coming in, and how do you cater to customers there. So the future expectations are going to be around pay per use, pay as you drive, even in commercial vehicles, especially in buses, and pay how you drive as well. Coming to digital, people change slower than technology normally. Technology moves much faster, except when you look at the IC engine era, 100 years, very little change, etc. But now suddenly in a few years, we will have to start learning to fail very fast, but we'll have to learn to succeed even faster with the digital era. I think we'll make mistakes, but we'll have to come and move forward. So all of this then comes about is a cultural change that will require to be made together with the dealerships in co-creation, in collaboration, but a cultural change where we will have to unlearn a lot. And unlearning is very difficult. And then relearn, but relearn very, very fast. Because I think Vijay mentioned, at the end of the day, it's customer experience that matters. How do you deal with the newest customer experience? So lots of changes, but health is the reason why we've shut down for the first time. And I don't think we can ever forget that experience. So we'll have to deal within that.
Thanks, Vipin. Rajan, I'd like to turn to you. Vipin spoke of a cultural change. Now, again, from your side, banking, you've not been able to meet the customer. And has this kind of now made, let's say, online banking just a kind of way of, let's say, going forward?
I'll come back to your question a little later because there are certain thoughts which have got evoked from what was being discussed by the eminent panel members. So three aspects which are very important for us to understand as to where we are heading. I think we are in a temporary phase where everything is looking so good. Everything is looking actually fantastic. The dealers have less stock. There is a good demand happening. And there is a shortage of semiconductors, and hence there is a long waiting period. There is also pent-up demand which is contributing. So this is what is the scenario today. But I think what is more important to understand is that the preparation for tomorrow is actually more important today than it is to handle what is happening today. The customer, who's buying today in a scenario when there is a shortage is very good. But if the tables turn and if there is no third wave, and let us hope there is no third wave, and then there is the kind of demand which will happen and the kind of customers who would come would actually be very, very mutated form of the customers, what we see, what we have been seeing yesterday and what we are seeing today. And while we are talking about digitization, we are talking about technology, the fact remains is that the customer preferences, whether it is in terms of the channel selection, whether it is in terms of a vehicle selection or any for that reason, any product what they are selecting, the parameters for making him reach the level of the final purchase have actually undergone the change. So Mr. Barar spoke about people seeing the videos and then deciding online. But the fact remains is that his assessment has gone to altogether a different level. And in that assessment, I think one thing which has really crunched is the purchase decision. Now, if as OEM and as financials and as channel partners, if all three of us are not on the same platform or at least not on the same wavelength to be able to make the customer provide what he wants there and then the sales can suffer. So this journey is more from a OEM or a bank or a dealer to customer. This journey is more from customer to the bank, to the channel or to the OEM. And that is a reality we all have to really work down. While we all have worked, whether it is banks or OEMs or dealers, they all have worked in a lot of digitization, a lot of creating videos, 360-degree view, etc., etc. A lot of work has happened. But I think we will be falling short of customers' expectation unless the entire value chain is not stitched and provided as one string to the customer. Your question was more on we are not able to meet the customer. Now, the fact is that when we are into the normal, the customer would actually not like to meet even then. So while today it is not a choice for him or us, but tomorrow it will be for his convenience that he would actually not like to meet. The second important point is that he will not only be interested in meeting, he would also not be interested in going through that tremendous amount of documentation what he was used to, right? So the banks are really are thinking and have no choice than to think of what you can do without the touch factor involved, which has been the basic criteria for customer selection. So a lot of money is being spent in upgradation. A lot of thought process is coming, and which is the part of innovation on the financial services. And I think going forward, that is going to be the new normal. One of the key thing for the banks is going to be how effectively they can reach various touch points, whether they are virtual or digital or phygital or physical. So in any form, one of the critical thing is that the whole imagination has to be how fast and how efficiently and promptly I can reach the customer at his doorstep.
Thanks, Rajan. Shyam, turning to you, Rajan made some really interesting points. I think firstly is the current situation. It's really a great situation in some ways. You're not overstocked, no discounts. There's a nice tension in the pipeline, and now it's not how much can I get off, but how soon I can get the car. But clearly, this is temporary. Obviously, this is the time to kind of prepare for the future. Made also an interesting observation that they don't want the hassle of, they want documentation, everything done online except the touch and feel of the car. Given this dynamic, going forward with the consumer, obviously his interaction is going to be very minimal with the interface with the dealer. So do you think this trend is going to increase? I mean, is it worrisome that finally they do so much research online that they literally come to you just finally to make the choice and move forward?
Yeah. You see, I completely agree with all the panelists as far as digitization is concerned. The amount of digitization and the way online business has picked up in the last 24 months is phenomenal. Earlier, a customer would come to a dealership at least 3-4 times to see the car, to test drive the car, etc. Now, everything is online, everything is available. He gets a 360-degree view. Dealers have put up virtual showrooms. So you can do the finance transaction, you can buy accessories, you can buy insurance, everything online. But what I see, like you rightly said and Rajan rightly said, this is going to be short-lived. Maybe 6 months, 9 months or 1 year, till the chip shortage goes away. Once the chip shortage goes away, manufacturers are going to manufacture, and then you will probably run out of all the leads that you have. No doubt the business is going to grow, but you will probably have a lot more challenges. Why? Because profitability at the dealerships is going to become a big challenge going forward. There are different ways the dealership business is getting disrupted. See, we had 6 pillars of making money in the dealership. One is the new cars, second is the finance, third is the insurance, the fourth is the service business, then the used car business, and the parts and body shop business. If you look at, I will come back to the last one, that is the body shop business. With new highways coming, accidents are coming down. Either it's a total loss or there's very little damage. So you got to convert in your PMGR or GR into the body shop business. So, I mean, I've been talking to a lot of dealers yesterday and today, and they all say that the body shop business is stagnant or it's coming down. Very few dealers said that it's moving up. The second thing is the finance business. What has happened, banks have got such a huge data of customers. Okay, they're going directly to the consumer. They are not going through the dealership anymore. So when the bank goes directly to the consumer, they offer 50 basis points or 75 basis points lower than what the dealer is giving. 4 or 5 years ago, dealers were making 3.5% on finance commissions. It's come down to 2 inclusive of GST. It's about 1.5% now. That's going to come down further because banks are going to reach out to the consumer and own the consumer. Okay, in this new age. Then the next one is with owning the consumer, the banks are going to say, why should the dealer do the insurance? I will do the insurance and give it to the bank. Okay, give the delivery order with the payment. So that income is also going to be under tremendous pressure. With digitization, like all the eminent panelists have said, do we require such large showrooms? You know, it's like Taj Mahals that we have all built. So number of people coming in is going to be low. So OEMs have to look at the new format of dealerships, smaller showrooms with smaller displays, and at least 30-35% is going to come from online. The number of the people in the dealerships. Do you require so many people? Because our manpower productivity, as far as sales are concerned, is very, very low when you compare to a European or an American company, the American dealerships. So they need to really look at those costs. Rationalization of manpower should take place, and better training to the people, because with EVs coming and new vehicles coming, if you walk into an Apple showroom, the kind of trained people that you have trying to sell their products and their services are very, very superior. So this is the way I see that the new formats will come. And to add to the last one, today dealerships are saddled with huge amounts of stocks. I mean, like Rajan said, and you also mentioned, this is short-lived. 6 months, 9 months, or 1 year down the line, the stock will get built up. Okay, and with kind of reduced margins and finance, insurance, etc., and your body shop incomes coming, how is the dealer going to face this? You know, so OEMs need to really look at a new format and a new model of business going forward.
Thanks, Shyam. Well, Shyam, actually your answer is sort of the question to all the OEMs. And, you know, again, Adib, let me start with you. You heard Shyam. I think obviously these are conversations which keep on going on. But fundamentally, consolidation of dealerships, dealership viability, all the issues which Shyam has raised. Of course, these are not new issues, but clearly looking in a digital age where the whole physical experience or even the need for a showroom or you know the interaction with the showroom, time spent in a showroom is diminishing. Even you know, financiers going directly to the customers, you know, dealers are worried. So you know, going forward, what do you think the future is going to be for fundamentally for dealer viability in this case?
See, let's first try to see, you know, what makes money for the dealer, and then probably we'll get into each parameter one by one.
Shyam had also
so
spelled it all
Shyam
out.
mentioned, yeah, of course, you know, no new vehicle,
Workshop,
you know, you make money, workshop, allied businesses, and on the, you know, and what we are trying to do here when we are talking about smaller showrooms is, you know, try to cut down on the expenses. And I think COVID also provided a great opportunity for all of us to kind of rationalize the costs. The interest costs, we spoke about it, went down. The manpower cost, because we rationalized during the first wave, that went down. The discounts, which was the biggest factor, that completely, but these are bound to come back. But I think one thing which has happened very well during this COVID period is that we were able to rationalize all the costs. The first thing which really hits is the you know, the interest cost when you know, the going is not so good, the stock levels pile up. So there are different approaches which are being taken by the manufacturers. One, of course, is you know, kind of reduce the production and not kind of keep pumping the cars into the market, because ultimately there's a pressure on both the dealers as well as the manufacturers, and it hits the bottom line. I think that is the new thinking. I think one of the manufacturers has also started, you know, looking at taking the entire burden of inventory on them and not passing it on to the dealer. Of course, in the process, the dealer margins have gone down. But I think when we talk to you know, some of those dealers, they are happy because they feel there is a certain bit of certainty in this process, because they don't have to bother about the inventory and also you know, the interest cost. So it gives certain amount of certainty. So I think the future will see a lot of these changes as we move forward. But yes, interest needs to be controlled. Coming to discounting, I think discounting is a factor of stocking. When your stocks become normal, the discounting automatically reduces. So that again will take care of discounts automatically. The third is manpower. And I think you spoke about that we are nowhere near some of the global standards in terms of how much manpower we should have. But I see a lot of OEMs getting into manpower calculators, making sure that and this is where you talk to dealers and understand what are the kind of requirements that we have in terms of manpower. And once your calculator is ready and it is transparent and dealer knows it, then you can always discuss how much manpower is the right manpower. And I think when we mutually sit together and finalize on that, there is no way that we can go wrong. The last but not least is your fixed investment, which is a long-term investment, because when you put a lot of capital into infrastructure and you have to kind of manage the interest cost over a period of time, I think that with the digitization, I'm sure will take care of that, especially in the smaller towns where the volumes are less and the footfalls are not really high. That can be managed in long run. So if we are able to manage these 4 factors or 4 or 5 factors in terms of expense heads, I think surely we can look at that. But one very important factor is, in terms of profitability, is what is the sales per outlet. And I think this is where most of the OEMs are. In fact, we are looking at that when your sales per outlet doesn't give you a return of X percentage, we will not go beyond that. Because when there is an over-dealerization, the factor of discounting and infighting also increases. So I think that is something which we need to look at. Of course, there are 3 factors actually which give us overall returns. One is sales per outlet, second is the ticket size, and third is what is your margin. When you multiply these 3 factors together, that is the output which is given to a dealer as how much money you can make. So there are, if you put everything together, I think there are 10 variables which we need to look at, and every OEM has its own strategy, which variable he wants to really work on. And ultimately the outcome is the dealer has to be profitable, because I think this is what we keep on talking about: happy dealer, happy customer. So this is in a nutshell what I think of how it is going to pan out in future.
Right. Just staying with the OEMs, Naveen, I think some interesting points.
At some point, I'd just like to come in on this.
Yeah, sure. You want to take this,
Vijay.
Vijay? You want to just I think Vijay's got something to react instantly. Please go ahead.
It's just while we spoke about 10 dimensions, I just want to put 2 things on the table for consideration here. One, and I think some of you all would have heard Santosh talk about it. He is the chairman of our Dealer Advisory Council, and we worked pretty well with our DAC in the last 2 years, especially during the pandemic. And at least I'm pleased to see that despite the impact of COVID, our dealers have survived and thrived reasonably well in these challenging times. So I just want to talk about 2 things. One, what is most important, which I believe is a very open and a transparent relationship between the OE and the channel partners, where it's literally an open book conversation, where dealers share with the OEs, these are our challenges, these are our cost structures, break dealers into different categories, have a fair representation of dealers from each of the categories, understand the realities of their cost structures, and accordingly look at stock, look at outlets, look at manpower costs. We did a lot of that. And the formula we worked with our dealers was, let's not talk about per vehicle rupee margin. Let's look at PAT. At the end of the day, when you're in business, it's not about managing just rupees margin, but it's about what's the retained profit that you make as a businessman, number 1. And number 2, a very important formula that we need to look at into calculation besides PAT is what's the return on capital employed? How much have you invested in the brand, and what's the reasonable return to earn from there? So I think these are 2 very important things: a transparent relationship, not just focus on margin, but on PAT, and also look at return on capital employed. And you have to be flexible as an OE and channel partner together to look at every 3 months, how is the business dynamics changing and what we need to do to look at cost structures.
Thanks, Vijay. Vipin, stick to being virtual. You've heard the other panelists, your fellow OEMs, members from fellow OEMs, talk about being transparent with the dealers. But fundamentally, the worry really is on viability. And I think Hardeep also raised this term, which is the over-dealerization. Do you think one of the things going forward really is to kind of, as you expand, to kind of keep a cap on the number of dealers? So as Hardeep said, that's a sales per outlet as a measure of viability. And just your thoughts on, this concern that there is as we are moving forward on, the whole dealer consolidation process.
Yeah, no, Hormuz, I think, when times are good, we don't have to expand dealership and dealership outlets at the same rate as the growth, simply because we believe the good times of growth will continue forever. And what is over-dealerization? It happens when there is a downturn and there's a business cycle will take place. So it's important to give the opportunity to existing dealerships to stretch. It is very, very important that when we plan sales per outlet, it not be taken only at the best of times, but also when the times will get worse. And that's the time that they must be viable. To complement dealerships at this point in time, we haven't talked adequately about service. Our service absorption ratio is a huge opportunity for dealerships, and many came out during the heart of the first wave and the second wave, risking their lives and their colleagues' lives to be out there servicing vehicles. I think that was tremendous, but service absorption is a great opportunity for EBITDA, for PAT. But always expand dealerships, not only when the times are good. Evaluate what will happen when times get a little sticky. Coming back to, what's happening is that the typical buying journey, coming back to the first part of the question, the typical buying journey is now exploratory. It's fairly unstructured, and now it's being controlled by the users. Of course, when we have CVs, LCVs will be more like car-like, MHCV different, fleet operators, and we've got EVs as well, and buses completely different. The question really is that rather than moving or being driven down a sales funnel, I think customers are expecting to be able to create their own journey to purchase in whatever way suits them. Finally, around that daily task, bringing it to a third party like product reviews, etc. So what we have to ensure with our dealerships, and I agree with Vijay, I agree with Hardeep, that it has to be a far more transparent and working together relationship to ensure that our dealerships have all information and data and technology to succeed during the difficult times and expand in a way that they stretch during the more difficult times rather than just keep adding outlets and then find that we have to descale later. But great opportunity to work together was never like before, and they've shown it. I mean, a great respect for our channel partners.
Thank you, Vipin. And with that, Naveen, you've heard, I think, as Vipin also said, and this whole concept of over-dealerization, that even when times are good, the current existing network should be able to expand rather than just adding dealers. So just your thoughts, just again, given the kind of reach, geography, and scale you all have, probably just outlets around the corner everywhere.
Yes, so one of the challenge, and I'll stick to, you've asked me the question about my industry, so stick to the two-wheeler for a moment. You've got, the whole dealership network, and then you've got a secondary network, right? If I look at from the customer perspective today, customer is looking for convenience. You would like to kind of, for service needs, would not like to travel very high. I'll give you example for that. There is a certain level of service retention that we have post-sales after free services. And we've looked at the distance from where the customer travels to the dealership. As the distance increases, there is a dropout, very significant dropout that happens. Now what we did is very small two ramp workshop we opened in core markets where like in Mumbai and Chennai. We saw that contribution of paid service, which normally is relatively lower in two-wheeler industry, was double than our normal workshops. So customer convenience will continue to hold the key, right? So that's very important. Hence, now in what format are we going to reach out and get closer to the customer is the question that has to be answered. Again, India is such a diverse country. Your cultures, buying patterns, behaviors, they change every 100 kilometers, 50 kilometers. And you've seen rural, semi-urban, urban evolving at a different pace in the country, and value that the customer searches during the buying process. In hinterland, in semi-urban, D-category towns, there is still a personal assurance the customer is looking at while buying. Whereas if you go to the cities like Pune and Bangalore, there's a lot more professional touch that the customer is looking at. Hence, the core values at the time of this buying process, that's very different. And that will give birth to whether the dealers will own these outlets and professionally manage and then get closer to the customer. And the rural side, maybe those kind of outlets will remain. But coming to the point of the showroom that Shyam also raised, I look at my father. What are the core values that he would look at? He's a pure loyalist. He's taken the same role, same job forever, didn't change. They were pure loyalists. Now, our kind of generation is looking for maybe a good standard and swanky showroom would kind of attract us. But I think next generation which is coming up is not looking for that. It's looking for a smart and experience, quality of life. And hence, as we move into the future, my belief is that all the big swanky showrooms will give way to smart, smaller outlets, which are digitally integrated for a seamless experience that the OEMs are trying to create on the digital world, bringing it and giving the same kind of experience at the outlet during the process of buying, and then taking it forward even the post-sale side. Right? So that's the way I look at it.
Right. So I think that is the way it's going from these big Taj Mahals, as Shyam had put it, to smaller and swankier showrooms. But clearly, I think a lot of products and services which the showrooms offered are going to be moving out. And Rajan, just turning to you over there, you're going again straight possibly to the customer. So just to understand, from a dealer standpoint, how does that fit in? And do you think this really is going to be an irreversible trend? Because as you said, this is something that's going to just go online irrespective of pandemic, no pandemic. It's just so much easier. And with the way technology is going, it's just the way forward. Yeah.
Clearly the formats of the showrooms, in my very strong opinion, needs a change in the thought process, both from the OEMs and also sometimes the aspirational, construct of the showroom in the dealer's mind and wherein he puts money and creates a Taj Mahal. That obviously is not going to really help because, as we discussed earlier, the customers are going online and they are looking at it. They have gone through the options, so probably that needs a change. I was actually waiting for somebody to touch upon the issue of inventory also. So I thought the issue will not only be about the showroom and also about the inventory. In my view, one of the biggest issue which has ever impacted the profitability of a dealership apart from the fixed cost which he incurs in terms of a showroom or something is the huge inventories they carry. And today you can see pink cheeks in the dealer community because of the low stock, high sales and low stock. And the moment this stock goes up, trust you me, all your problems are back. So if there is a thought process and there is a constructive thought process to ensure that OEM, dealer, financier, because the poor financier also is sitting on one side, and the customer between this value chain, what really needs to be limited is irrespective of the up and down in the sale, a stock does not breach a particular level. I think that is very important. Just stand aside and think about one issue which the banks have at their disposal. Yesterday, I was assessing a dealer based on his past financials or track record. For the last 2 years, there are no financials, there is no track record, right? And if I look at last 6 months track record, perhaps because of the cost going down, because the lights were switched off, the showrooms were not opening, the manpower has been rationalized, inventory has come down, possibly the balance sheets will look very good, right? But can I actually say, because if I look at the orthodox model of looking backwards, possibly you cannot do any assessment. So you have to look forward now. You have to look at something, which is not there in your hand, and and that holds good both for a customer as well as a dealer. You are projecting some financials, which the profitability which he will generate from his business for the next 2 years, and that is going to be the change in the model in which you do the financial assessment of the dealer. If this kind of an assessment has to happen, and if you keep all the parameters of yesteryears, trust you me, it will be very difficult to get the channel finance for the dealers. It's imperative, and it would be very, very important, and FADA can play an important role, and all the OEMs are here, and of course their engagement has increased in the last 1 or 2 years. I think one of the core issue which needs to be settled is, irrespective of the sales cycle going up and down, can we think that this is the level of inventory plus minus whatever percentage, and this is the model we will run on. That will bring a lot of decorum in the entire value chain, and it will also give a lot of comfort to the banks today who are wary of extending the lines. So I think this would be a very important point. I was actually waiting for somebody to pick up that point.
I think, Rajan, we're in this bubble where inventory is not so much of an issue, so maybe it's not come up. But Shyam, I think, circling back to you, they fundamentally answered your concerns. But, again, looking at this over-dealerization and being very frank, looking at one of your brands, where in a place like Mumbai, they've gone from 3 to 2. I don't know whether it's by design or the fact that dealer viability sometimes, the weakest don't survive. Do you see that happening, and automatically the kind of number of dealers, maybe dealer consolidation happening that way? And just giving your own experience right now in terms of, sales per outlet. Are you happy with that? What do you think is the way forward?
I think Rajan touched upon a very important point. What are your 3 costs as a dealer? Manpower costs, rental costs, as well as inventory costs. So my question to the OEMs is, should a dealer carry inventory at all? Okay, you give him targets, okay? And if he's not meeting the targets, you can penalize him. Because there's another thing. A lot of dealers, there are more than 28,000 dealers in this country. Their fathers, their grandfathers, or they would have worked a lot. They pledge their homes, they pledge their offices, and then they take inventory funding as well as loans, okay? Hoping that the brand will do very well for them, okay? What if this brand fails? So if the inventory is not there on the dealer's books, it will be easier for a banker, Rajan will be able to tell this, to evaluate the customer and give him money. So that's what Mercedes has done, the brand that you mentioned to me. They've completely removed inventory from the dealer's books. Okay, they've rationalized manpower. They've looked at the retail of the future, keeping in view 5 to 10 years, keeping in view EVs that are coming in, and they said, this is the way we're going to do business. Even keeping in view the demo cars. I think it caps the losses and it caps your profitability also. But at the same time, what happens is a high degree of comfort is given to the financier. A high degree of comfort is given to the entrepreneur who's running the business, because sometimes he can lose crores of rupees and just shut down. Okay, so that comfort they have brought in. They have also brought in another very, very good thing. It's called the risk protection. What is risk protection? In a pandemic, let's say a dealership gets closed for 3 months, 4 months, who knows what happens. Today it could be COVID, tomorrow it can be anything else. They protect the dealer against the downside. They say, okay, you pay only your manpower costs, I will take care of your rentals, I will take care of your water bill, I will take care of your electricity bill, which I think is a good model. They've done this in 5 countries across the world, and they want to replicate it in India also. That's a good move, because stock is off the dealer's books. They've rationalized manpower, and they've said, let's have smaller showrooms with more emphasis on digital. They expect the dealer to do 25 to 30% of his business on digital and 70% of it, on physical retails. Okay, and so it's called the retail of the future. I think it's the move on the right direction. I would say other manufacturers have to examine that in some way or the other, bring that so that they protect the dealers and they protect the banks. My next point is in the garment business, which I know it's a little different from what we are dealing in, but I know of very large franchises in this country who go and invest tens of crores into the garment business. They keep the stock, they give the advances, and they get the interiors done. So before there's a principal to dealer to principal agreement where the manufacturer or the brand promises the investor a certain return on his equity. It could be 15%, it could be 18%. At the end of the year, the dealer and the manufacturer sit together, prepare a P&L and say, okay, have you made that kind of money? If it's below 18 or 21%, which he has promised, the garment manufacturer or the brand, it could be a Tommy Hilfiger, it could be Diesel. I've done extensive work with Tommy Hilfiger. He gives you a credit note and he says, okay, for the investment you have made, you haven't got that return that I promised you, here's the credit note. So your complete losses are capped. Because today what is happening is, God forbid, a dealer puts in 5 crores, 10 crores in a city like Bombay and Delhi or Bangalore or Chennai, he will put in more. And if the brand doesn't succeed, for whatever reason it is, it becomes a point of contention between the dealer and the finance company. Okay, the banker is against you saying, I'm going to auction your house, I'm going to do this. So can we evolve a new model like that?
Right. Thanks, Shyam. And before I go to the OEMs, Rajan, I just want to come back to you. Just your thoughts on this completely new distribution, or this retail model rather, where the OEM is holding the stock, the OEM is invoicing, and fundamentally the dealers have become, in a way, commission agents. To come to your point, you were worried about extending lines, when dealers are having a lot of stock. What do you think of this, retail model which Mercedes is trying? Are there any risks to it, or do you think it's something that is a win-win for everyone?
I think it's too early to comment. It's a new format for the Indian market. You have Mercedes on one side, you have yet another unexplored model of Ola, which is there. I don't see a problem in this from a bank's perspective, because the dealer would still need to install his infrastructure. He would still need working capital. He would still have to run his workshop. The only thing which I think the time actually tells is that that remaining commission, what is now going to him, is far lesser than what it was optically, right? But how much does it have an impact on the bottom line, and how he's able to cover his entire cost is, I think, something which time will tell. But I would say it's a bright spark. It's a good spark, and it's a bright thought process. And maybe in this form or in a mutated form, these are the formats which really need to be tested in these times. Right.
And just turning to Vijay, you've obviously studied this. Your thoughts on moving to this sort of a retail model, or at a mass level, is it more challenging? I'm sure you all have thought of it as well.
Yeah, Hormuz, I want to come in and you use the word win-win. I think there are 3 wins in this: OE, dealer, and customer. And every business model has its pros and cons. So I just feel that one needs to find a balance in all the 3. And to me, one downside of this kind of a model is customers go out there and they want delivery immediately. So I think one just needs to keep in mind, how do you balance everything? And what's more important is, as we've been talking, that the return that a dealer expects to make by investing in this is important to ensure that we give the dealers. As long as that gets covered, and there are healthy norms, whether it's manpower, infrastructure, fixed costs, inventory. As long as that is done, I think it becomes a win-win for all three. So in my mind, I think the solution to the challenge is about making sure that all three, whether it's OE, dealer and customer, everyone's interest is maintained, and we should try and find a balance rather than just trying to swing from one side to the other.
Right. And Vipin, do you think such a model is feasible in your sector? I mean, obviously, on paper, it just makes a lot of sense. But again, there are certain nuances which probably something so structured may not be able to cover.
Almost, I'd like to break it, as I mentioned, in three parts. Light commercial vehicles, where there are individual buyers, much like at least we try and treat that the way cars are sold. I think it's possible, it works, it can work. Buses are a completely different kettle of fish. Of course, they're getting electrified more and more. And when you look at medium and heavy commercial vehicles, are completely different in terms of the fact fleet owners buy them. So we will have, in a sense, three different structures going forward. It won't be all in one. But each one will need a rethink. One thing is for sure, we will need a rethink, and we've got to ensure that this value chain remains profitable. It is absolutely necessary that it's not OEM, it's not dealer, it's not customer. The value chain has to derive benefit and remain profitable.
Right. And
Hormuz, who knows? Sorry, Hormuz, who knows? The answer could be a hybrid, right?
Right.
The answer could be a hybrid somewhere in between.
But a hybrid in what way? I mean, how would you envisage that?
No, I mean, look, I'm just like, we were saying that right now semiconductor supply chain issues, stocks are lower, dealer inventory cost is, or interest cost is very low. The true test of this model happens when, when it will reverse and supplies will not be a constraint and demand cycles play in. So who knows that a hybrid model could be that there are certain agreed norms of inventory which the dealer holds, and beyond that, there could be a certain level of inventory that OEs hold. So who knows, there could be a hybrid answer to this problem.
Right. And, Naveen, turning to a more radical kind of distribution model is what Ola has kind of talked about. Of course, it's still on paper, which is, going straight to OEM, going straight to the customer. I mean, you can do this with, consumer goods, phones, stuff like that. But do you think something like this is practical with two-wheelers? I know I put you on the spot, but...
No, that's okay. I think this question came in the last panel also.
Okay.
That, someone like Ola, entering into new space, would definitely look at from radical actions, right? The channel is not a strength because they don't have any, right? And hence, quick go-to-market, that's the way they would look at, basically. But I still very, very strongly believe that in a category like this that we are operating, which is a very high considered purchase, it's not that, I go to a website and I look at the products.
You don't just move it to cart.
Exactly, right? So you would need a touch and feel. You would evaluate your option. You will look for a test ride of the product, right? And then you finally decide. And hence, while, I'm keen to look at how it proceeds them, but my belief is that, sooner or later that need will be felt, right? So I'm looking forward to it. While on the last question, this inventory model that we're talking about, see, just to give my perspective also, OEMs are conscious. I think every OEM who's spoken now and he's spoken in the last panel is conscious about the dealer profitability. Different models will emerge, right? So if it is about Mercedes model, wherein they're kind of owning the inventory, you might have, very localized regional distribution centers of the OEM owned, wherein Just in time can be one factor which can optimize the inventories, and more so in the kind of the options that are getting created to consumers, the product ranges which are getting created. I think it's a core need which has to be addressed sooner than later. And the digital impact that we've seen on the consumer journey, I think somewhere the digital will also start playing a role in terms of estimating and forecasting demand at SKU level and playing it back to the value chain and accordingly, formulate the inventory needs and accordingly placing the inventory at the dealerships. While the work on this should start, and I'm sure OEMs would have realized and must be working, especially the times that we've recently gone through, the kind of pain that it has created in the whole ecosystem. And one irreversible change is also about, overall everybody is looking at how do we kind of optimize the spend and investment and take the best value out of the assets that we create. On the showroom side, we've already discussed that the direction to go is not a big swanky showrooms and all. That's it.
Right. We are running out of time, and I think I've just got maybe another round, which I'd like to touch upon. As you know, you've talked about saving costs in various areas, showroom, manpower, all that. But I want to touch upon revenue, and in particular, workshop revenue, which is really bread, butter, and jam for a lot of dealerships. But going forward, looking at the trends of technology, you're going to be getting EVs, which require less maintenance, less workshop revenue. Cars are getting more reliable, all that sort of thing. So is this going to be a concern for dealers? And Hardeep, I'd like to start with you because you're a relatively new manufacturer. Congrats, you've done 2 lakh Seltoses, but still compared to 100 million, it's a small number. But, and obviously the legacy brands have a huge vehicle park, which keeps them going. But, with EVs coming in particular, which require, very little maintenance, very little, let's say workshop revenue definitely will shrink going forward with these new products. That's a big chunk of revenue which will be taken out from, the network. So just your thoughts, starting with you, your thoughts on this. Do you think this is also a concern, and, what other sources of revenue can sort of compensate?
So let's first try to look at, what is the contribution which after sales makes to the overall revenue. And it varies depending upon, what time of the life cycle are we at. So for example, currently, I would say 60 to 70% of your profits will come from sales because there are no discounts, no inventory. So you'll make a lot more money in sales. But in a normal scenario, at least 50% comes from after sales. If we average it out, 50% of the profitability contribution comes from after sales. Now, what is the impact on after sales once the EVs come in? I would say out of 50%, maybe 20% will reduce to 20% and 30% is the gap. I'm just trying to put a hypothetical figure. It's very difficult to really pinpoint at this point in time how much is going to be the drop. So where do we compensate this 30% from? Yeah. So 2 ways to compensate. One is, of course, look at margins in all the other areas and how do you really grow it up. Number 2, when the revenues are dropping in after sales, your costs are also dropping. If you have X manpower today, it's not that you're going to have the same manpower when the EVs come in. So the cost side also will come down. So out of 30%, if I say 50% of that is taken care of by a reduction in cost, so the delta, which is you still need to take care of, is about 15%. So that 15% is what you really need to take care of from maybe additional margins. But another factor which plays in is your infrastructure cost, which is a long-term cost. Now, when today with the increasing car park, every 3 years or 3 to 5 years, you need to put up a new infrastructure. That capital investment is also taken care of because you don't need extra investment. So, and I don't know what figure to put to that because your capital investment also goes down. So if I put in maybe another 5 to 10%, so the delta is, let's say, about 10 to 15%, which we need to take care of, and that will surely come from the other margins which are left out for a dealer to make earnings. So that's, broadly a broad maths which I can put to that.
Right. Vijay, you've heard Hardeep saying that he does foresee after-sales workshop revenue definitely dropping with something like EVs coming in. And, again, margins can be one way to compensate. So just, if you wanted to add anything to that.
No, I think Hardeep has covered it well. And, I think some of these, it's the classic example is who knew the pandemic was going to come. But when it came, we found solutions together, right? And in fact, I was just looking at the data sometime back, Hermes, and frankly, the number of dealers that closed in 2018 and 19 were much more than the dealers that closed in the pandemic. So the larger point I'm trying to make is necessity becomes the mother of invention, and I'm sure that as EV penetration will start coming in, the OEs will ultimately have to work with channel partners to find profitable solutions, either through margins, reducing cost structures, finding innovative parallel products to sell, because don't forget at that time, products will also become connected. So there could be a huge range of opportunities that will come up in terms of upselling technology products for connected vehicles. So there would be innovative answers that will come up as we go.
Right. And Vipin, very quickly with you, clearly your, with M&HCVs and LCV, LCVs, I think much sooner, of course, because that last mile mobility EVs will come in. So, again, as you said, very different dynamics for all three segments. Clearly the heavy vehicles, maybe hydrogen in the future, still some way off. But overall, clearly after sales and workshop revenue, a big chunk, I'm sure, of dealer revenue. So, just your comments on how this is going to pan out.
No, the trend but it'll be slower. Trend may be there, it'll be slower. One. The second is how much do our dealers actually fulfill by way of after-sales service in the commercial vehicle business, and how much do the, let's say, the less
organized.
The workshops that do it, there's a big piece of cake for dealerships to actually take of the current after-sales service. The penetration levels are not high, so somebody else is eating that piece of pie, which must be recaptured anyway. The third, I think, relates to data and data monetization. There's a tremendous amount of opportunity for dealerships, along with OEMs, but dealerships to capture data and monetize that data. That is the wealth that dealerships have to look at. So new business models. But IC engines are here for a long time, especially in the MHCV. There's a lot of time, and dealerships need to capture every opportunity rather than somebody eat that piece of pie. Maybe almost 50% is eaten by somebody else.
Right. Thanks, Vipin. And Naveen, turning to you, obviously, pace of electrification, it looks like in two-wheelers is going to be faster than maybe other segments, so it seems. But looking at the players that are planning to roar in. But again, you've got a massive vehicle park as well. Do you think this is an immediate concern? And as Vipin said, data monetization, that's something also which could be added revenue.
Yeah, so see, in two-wheeler industry, if I kind of talk about, I think still a large chunk of the bottom line is supported by the vehicle margins and the margins which come along with the sales of vehicle, which are insurance or the finance. The consumer which is entering into motor mobility is an aspirational youth, right? And to cater to the aspirations of that youth, I think there is a huge opportunities which are sitting in the customization space and the accessorization space. I think that's one big space that OEMs and dealers collaboratively have to explore and work sincerely in that space. So that's one big opportunity space that I kind of look at. The second, this used vehicle business, especially in two-wheelers, is largely unorganized, right? And I think there is a big pain that the customer has in terms of selling off the older vehicles, getting the right price, and also getting rid of all the worries that the customer has in terms of paperwork and documentation and things like that, hope doesn't go in the wrong hands. I think that's one another big space wherein OEMs have to come in and play and sort out that space and kind of make it a revenue model for the dealerships as we chart our journey into the future. Third piece, I think data monetization, the right set of data capturing. I think there's some hygiene factors, some fundamental factors which need to be sorted out before we get into the space. I think there's a huge database that comes in. Good, innovative companies, startups are monetizing that. Why not OEMs and dealers put together start a stepping stone in that direction?
Right. Shyam, very quickly with you, obviously, I think still too early to say about workshop revenues going down, but what I think Naveen raised was some interesting revenue opportunity. Of course, accessorization is there. I'm sure that's growing. That could be one way forward, data. So are you concerned or do you think there's enough, let's say, other revenue streams to offset?
There's another revenue stream which I've been thinking about, ever since I'm sitting on this panel. That is giving mobility services. There are a lot of people who move from city to city or who move from state to state. Today, dealers are not providing vehicles to these customers and charging them. Zoom is a story which went down, but if you look at Rev, last night Samir was telling me that Shyam, 400 cars a month he's adding. Okay, so that means there's somebody who's taking it. So dealers have both the hardware and the software. So dealers should re-engineer their business model and see whether can I start giving cars on a daily basis, on a subscription model, monthly basis, or a 3-monthly basis, or a 6-monthly basis, good income the dealer can make. The second thing that none of us have touched on is the used car business. I'm surprised that look at CarTrade. CarTrade got valued at $1.2 billion, and Spinny is valued at $900 million. We as a dealer community have not looked at it. Let's say a set of dealers across the country of different OEMs come together, create a platform. The dealer has both the back end and the front end. Give warranties on these cars and start selling it. Okay, that's a huge revenue that the dealer can make. Once you get into the mobility business, or you get into the subscription business, or you get into the used car business with warranties, the stickiness of the customer to the dealership is very, very high. He will not leave you, and he won't mind paying 100 or 200, 250 basis points. So I think we as dealers, with the help of OEMs, need to look at these practices that are followed in the West and see how can we bring this in to protect our own turf, dealers as well as OEMs.
Right.
So this is one thought that came to me.
Thanks, Rajan. Last word with you. Clearly, I think there are a lot of going forward into the future, a lot of future revenue opportunities, some new, some which can be explored even further, a lot of them which can be financed, of course, the whole used car piece which Shyam was talking about. Just your thoughts on, from the dealer's point of view and, the additional revenue they could look at in lieu of some of it dropping.
I was just actually trying to visualize that there is no workshop, or that workshop is no more that dirty, crowded workshop. Perhaps it could be a bank branch, right? It could be thought in many ways, as Nakra very clearly said, that as you walk into that, you would have more innovations and more replacements, right? If you have a customer who comes with a data footprint, and there is a lot you can do around it. You can do around used cars, you can do around subscription models, you can do around banking products, you can do around insurance products. So you have a lot of cross-sell opportunities. So if you visualize, this could be yet another showroom of maybe certain virtual and physical items as well, right? So it can actually, change to a large extent. It could be some experience centers, It could be something else which can add to the revenue. So there could be various thoughts which can be thought through around it. But clearly, that 30% or 50%, whatever is that revenue, that would certainly get replaced with something else, if not this.
Well, thanks very much. We've run out of time. In fact, just got 2 minutes left as per the clock. If there are any questions, I think we have time for a few. Well, I don't think there are any questions. So thanks very much to all the panelists. Really, it is quite difficult crystal gazing, but I think certain trends are definitely emerging. I think the dealer is here to stay for a long time. I don't think you're going to reach a stage where your security guard will say there's a parcel come for you and it'll be a car. I think that day will still be a long way off. But clearly, I think it's a very dynamic time. I think it's going to go through a lot of change, a lot of transformation. But I think finally, what's great is that there's still a pull in the market. Still, people want that personal mobility, and may that continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Well, before you leave the stage, I'd like to invite certain gentlemen onto the stage for the felicitations. Can I please request Mr. Pranav Shah and Mr. Rajwel, along with Mr. Govind Mewar, to kindly join us on the stage to felicitate our panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, a small token of appreciation on the behalf of FADA to all our panelists. Presenting Mr. Hardeep Brad, Vice President and Head of Marketing and Sales, Kia India. Presenting to Mr. Naveen Chauhan, Head Sales and After Sales, Hero MotoCorp. Ladies and gentlemen, let's keep the claps posted. Thank you. The next one to Mr. Rajan Pental, Senior Group President and Global Head, Retail Banking, Yes Bank. Dr. MP Sham, Dealer Principal, Akshaya Motors. Louder, I believe you're all capable, right? Come on, everyone, let's hear it. And of course, our moderator for the session, Mr. Hormaz Sorabji, Editor, Autocar, India. And ladies and gentlemen, the felicitation mementos to Mr. Vijay Ram Nakra and to Mr. Vipin Sondhi will be delivered to them. Thank you very much, gentlemen. You may kindly all take your seats. Yes, of course, for the picture. Can I please request you all to step forward?
I think we can disconnect.